day students. Are you ready to learn something new today? Okay. For today, we will be discussing about planning application and designing interfaces. Designing an application is the process of deciding what an application will do, how it will do it, and what it will look like. To further understand what are the things to be learned today, here are the learning outcomes. At the end of this lesson, the students should be able to identify the different types of tools in VB.NET Windows Form. Demonstrate the different uses of each basic controls in VB.NET. Execute debugging applications and compiling Visual Basic.NET. Explain how to control different forms of properties in VB.NET. Define Visual Basic.NET event handling. Let us now define what is control. An object is a type of user interface element you create on a Visual Basic form by using a toolbox control. Using the form, we can build an attractive user interface. It is like a container for holding different control that allows the user to interact with an application. In fact, in Visual Basic, the form itself is an object. Every Visual Basic control consists of three important elements. First is the properties. It describes the object. Second is methods, it can cause an object to do something. Lastly, events. Events are what happens when an object does something. Before writing an event procedure for the control to respond to an event, you have to set certain properties for the control to determine its appearance and how will it work with the event procedure. You can set the properties of the controls in the properties window or at runtime by just simple using a statements in the program code. Where object.property equals value, in which an object is what you're about to customize, while property is the characteristics you want to change, and lastly, the value is the new property setting. Let us have an example. Form1.caption equals hello. Now, let us discuss what is control method. A method is a procedure created as a member of a class and they cause an object to do something. Methods are used to access or manipulate the characteristics of an object or a variable. Methods also define as blocks of code designed into controls that tell the control how to do things, such as move to another location on a form. Just as with properties, not all controls have the same methods, but there are some common methods like below. Focus gives focus to the object specified in the method call. Move changes an object's position in response to a code request. Drag handles the execution of a drag and drop operation by the user. Methods also define as procedures built into a control that tell the control how to do things. Categories of methods. If you are using a control such as one of those provided by the toolbox, you can call any of its public methods. The requirements of such a method depend on the class being used. If none of the existing methods can perform your desired task, you can add a method to a class. For example, the message box control has a method named show, which is called in the code snippet below. For example, the message box control has a method named show, which is called in the code snippet below. Now, let us talk about control events. So what is event? An event is a signal that informs an application that something important has occurred. Programs need to do something in response to user actions and actions initiated by the operating system. Such actions, which are external to the program itself, is called an events. Events are most often triggered by some form of user interaction. Forms and their controls all have their own unique set of events that are specific to a particular type of object. For example, when a user clicks a control on a form, the form can raise a click event and call a procedure that handles the event. There are various types of events associated with a form like click, double click, close, load, resize, etc. Following is the default structure of a form load event handler subroutine. You can see this code by double-clicking the code, which will give you a complete list of the all events associated with form control. The form load structure has its own definition. Handles mybase.load indicates that form1_load, subroutine handles load event. If you want to initialize some variables like properties, etc., then you will keep such code inside form1_load, subroutine. Important thing to keep is the name of the event handler, which is by default form1_load, but you can change this name based on your naming convention you use in your application programming. There are different types of events and different ways to trigger them. An event can be triggered in the following ways. User interaction, clicking a button, for example. Object event, a timer control can trigger a timer event. System event, the operating system can trigger events. Code, the program itself may cause an event to occur. So now, let's us explore the basic controls in VB.NET. All controls are basically be found in a box called Toolbox. It will automatically open when you create an application, whether it's Windows or web form. VB.NET provides a huge variety of controls that help you to create rich user interface. Functionalities of all these controls are defined in the respective control classes. The control classes are defined in the system.windows.forms namespace. Here are the well-known or commonly used controls in VB.NET. Forms, the container for all the controls that make up the user interface. Text box, it represents a Windows text box control. Label, it represents a standard Windows label. Button, it represents a Windows button control. List box, it represents a Windows control to display a list of items. Combo box, it represents a Windows combo box control. Radio button, it enables the user to select a single option from a group of choices when paired with other radio button controls. Checkbox, it represents a Windows checkbox. Picture box, it represents a Windows picture box control for displaying an image. Progress bar, it represents a Windows progress bar control. Scroll bar, it implements the basic functionality of a scroll bar control. Date time picker, it represents a Windows control that allows the user to select a date and a time and to display the date and time with a specified format. All of these commonly used controls objects will be described by properties. It also have a drag and drop features, which is one of the good side with VB.NET, although programmers are basically the one to add validations according to the desired program. As you can see, this is the appearance or an example of forms. Properties of the form object in VB.NET used to edit and view file, project, and solution properties. You can find properties window on the view menu. You can also open it by pressing F4 or by typing properties in the search box. In this part, I will explain to you about anchoring and docking and how it works in Visual Basic.NET. The anchor and dock properties of a form are two separate properties. Anchor refers to the position a control has relative to the edges of the form. In Visual Basic.NET, when we want to resize the controls dynamically with the form, then we use anchoring. Suppose we are designing a form and that form can be resized by the user at runtime, then for proper resize and reposition of the controls on your form is a must. Anchor position for the control is defined in anchor properties. When we set the anchor properties of the control of a form and the form is resized, the distance between the control and the anchor position is maintained. So let's add anchor control. We'll just have to follow a few steps. Start a new Windows projects. Add two text boxes to your form, and set the multiline properties of both to true. Change the height of the boxes. Click on text box 1 and locate the anchor property in the properties box. The default is to anchor the control to the top, left edge of the form. Click the arrow to reveal a curious drop-down box. The next image has the text box anchored to the right and bottom edges of the form. Notice where the cursor is in the images, and what has been changed. Click the arrow on the drop-down box to confirm your choices. Notice where the cursor is in the images, and what has been changed. Click the arrow on the drop-down box to confirm your choices. To see what effect this all has, do the following steps. Set the anchor property of text box 1 on the default of top, left. Change the anchor property of text box 2 to none, all the small rectangles should be white. Run your program and drag the edges of the form outward. This will resize your form. What you should notice is that text box 1 stays where it is, and that the left edge of text box 2 moves. Stop your program from running. Change the anchor properties of the two text boxes to anything you like. Run your form again and watch what happens. Try anchoring one text box to the left and right of the form. Watch what happens. But anchoring a control to an edge of the form is a useful property to get used to, if you have a form that can be resized and want your controls to stay where they are. Lastly, let us talk about docking. In Visual Basic.NET, when we want a control addressed to the edges of its container form, then we use docking. Suppose we are designing a form and we want that the particular control addressed to the particular edge of its container form, then we have to dock a control. It can be done by selecting the dock property of that control from the Properties window. When you select the dock property, you see the small editor from which you can select the side on the form in which the control should be docked. Docking is similar to anchoring, but this time the control fills a certain area of the form. To see how it works, click on one of your text boxes and locate the dock property. Click the arrow to reveal a drop-down box. This time, all the rectangles are like buttons. You can only dock to one side at a time, and the default is none. Click a button to see what it does to your text box. Click the middle one, and the text box will fill the whole form. Docking is quite useful when used with the splitter control and panels, allowing you to create a Windows-style interface. Okay, that is the end of our discussion. Thank you for listening. I hope you've learned from today's topic.